Hello everybody, this is Brian Stosh.
And George Zeeks.
And Mike Haley.
And we are back today with our webinar series on productivity robbers. And today we're going to look at customer acquisition and retention marketing and service advisor skills.
And how that affects the labor margin in your shop. What is this acquisition marketing? What's that for?
Great question, George. And acquisition marketing is about attracting brand new customers.
Okay, so what's the retention marketing?
Retention marketing is about keeping the customers that you already have and that know you, love you, and trust you, and getting them to come back more and more.
Okay, so why is this difference between the two important? Help me out, brother.
All right, well, this can come at you several fold, and when car count is a big key for production, for productivity. And car count comes at you a couple different ways. You have new customers, you have repeat customers, and you also have your repair customers and your maintenance customers. But back to new and repeat customers, and wouldn't it be great to have a business full of repeat customers? That every time you ask them to purchase, they just say yes?
That would be fantastic.
And yes, most people would believe that, but the reality is, no, it's not. And if you have a business full of repeat customers, you are going to run out of stuff to talk about with your customers. And you're going to have what we call ARO erosion. Every other year, you're going to have big average repair orders, especially if you're a 2-year, 30,000-mile kind of service guy like myself. Every other year, you'll have big maintenance services and maybe some brake services and or tires, but it's the years in between that you typically don't have much to talk about. So you need an influx of new customers into your business to get into your maintenance stance to try to plateau that average repair order from year after year after year.
So Brian, what you're saying is that acquisition is important. We need to keep new customers coming in, and retention is important because we need to keep the customers we have coming back. Am I getting this right?
You got it, George. You need the blend of repeat and new customers year after year after year. And as well, and it's the one thing I didn't mention, is you are going to lose customers year over things that you cannot control. So, yep, we need new ones coming in every day.
Okay, so Mike, let me ask you a question. What does all this have to do with labor margins? Sounds like we're talking about marketing to me.
Well, they tie into one another, George. If we don't have enough cars to keep the techs at full production, then the margin will go down. So we have a couple of choices. We can have more cars for the staff to work on so they are able to stay busy, or we can get more labor hours sold per car to keep them busy. A lot of the shops have a combination of both. They don't need as many cars as they think because they don't do the best job currently with the cars that they already have.
Okay, so this is all great, guys, but okay, we're talking about technician productivity, marketing. I'm starting to get that, but what's the national average for tech productivity in a shop?
Well, I'll take that one, George, and you're going to think this is kind of low, but national average is only 67% productive. And then you really got to ask yourself, what do they do in the other third of the time?
It sounds like we're smoking and joking, I don't know, maybe cleaning up, maybe chatting on our cell phone, having a cigarette break. So if that's the case, what should we be shooting for?
George, what they should be shooting for is 90 to 100% to the max of their crew.
And George, also, is what we've talked about before, and that's not necessarily just labor hours, hours billed versus hours available. That should be measured by total sales per tech versus the total sales capacity per tech, as well as the crew.
So that kind of goes back to what we talked about before, knowing what your shop, what your current crew should be able to produce, and making sure that we're getting the right volume in so we can keep them busy and hit that 90% mark. Am I getting it right?
It's about having the right marketing plan that based off of what is that capacity per tech as well as the capacity per crew, how many cars per day or per week does that crew need to have to be able to do that?
Okay, Brian, so 90%, that's in a 40-hour week. You're talking the guys turning 36 hours. I know guys can turn 50, 55 hours a week. What about that?
Well, George, you're right, and I know a few of them myself, but what you got to think about are the weeks that just does not happen. What about the weeks about a storm, a snowstorm, rain, or whatever thing comes at you that causes you not to be available 5 days a week? I need to be able to sustain that 90% production week after week all year long.
Well, that makes sense because that's going to keep the labor margin where it should be on a consistent basis and not just spiking up and down. Okay, I'm starting to get it. So, next question. We're talking about the productivity of the crew, but what about the number of bays? Does that matter at all?
George, you should always be looking to grow your customers until you reach the shop bay potential. In a perfect world, it would mean that you're producing an hour of labor in every bay every hour that you're open.
Wow, that sounds like, something tough to do.
Well, you're right, George. It is tough to do. Again, remember, this topic on productivity wrappers was about customer acquisition and retention. And it is tough to do, so you got to make sure you have the right marketing plan in place with daily, weekly, monthly, and your quarterly events to be able to keep that car count coming at you consistently.
Okay. So let me ask you another question. What could be one way that we could do better with the cars that we already have that are coming in the shop?
Well, George, great question, and you know us. This is something we preach every day. And make sure that the courtesy check process is in place and is working well. And to make sure that we are setting the right expectations for the customer so that the car is done when they expect it. And to make sure that the car is done right the first time.
Sure, and also, George, you want to make sure we have an exit scheduling plan to get them back for their next visit. Educating them and setting them up for the next service is key.
Great point, Mike.
So, Mike, really curious about this. What are the two biggest complaints that customers have about a repair shop?
Obviously, George, if the car is not properly repaired. But the number one complaint is when the car is not ready when promised. Today's customers are women with busy schedules. If we had a completion time of 5 o'clock, she expects to be leaving at 5:01. Everyone's very busy and has a schedule that they adhere to, and when we do something to alter that, we have a dissatisfied customer.
So if they're not happy, then we don't retain them as customers, and then we got to go out and find new customers, and then we have a slack in business and labor margin suffers. Okay, got that. Okay, so Brian, I'm starting to get this, but what does this all have to do with retention? What's that got to do with labor margin? Help me out.
Well, George, being that technicians are hard to find today, there's a lot of technicians that are paid some type of a guarantee. And even if there's not a guarantee, maybe even a flat rate type of a compensation plan, you still have some fixed costs. So there's inventory hours that are getting burned every day that if I don't have the car count to keep my technicians busy. And unfortunately, most shop owners and/or service writers really don't have any idea of what that inventory looks like. So knowing what your magic number or your inventory number of hours that needs to be sold per day, per week, per month, per year is a great way to get started and also help you build your marketing plan. Now, just a little example of inventory hours. You need to think about how many hours the technicians are scheduled for, as well as the number of technicians you have. And let's say I have 3 technicians. And in more perfect world automotive, they're only 40-hour work week for these guys. There's 120 inventory hours that needs to be sold each week. And also, George, we need to think about that role of the service advisor. And that service advisor needs to be focused on selling those hours. And they also need to be focused on scheduling that work ahead of time. And whether it's from previous work already sold as recommended services, and these could be some work that we had already sold and scheduled from prior services, but also about a next appointment. As a customer leaves today, I want them focused on scheduling a service for 3 months down the road or wherever you train your customers for oil services. So that service writer has many responsibilities with this car count.
So let me ask you guys a question, because I run into this all the time when I'm talking to people, the coaches or the clients across the country. Walk-in customers and waiting customers. Are they a bad idea?
Actually, we love walk-ins and waiters, and a lot of them could be new customers. And with them waiting, we are able to spend some time and build a great relationship with them.
So, George, you just can't count on how many there might be. So that's why the scheduled appointments become so important.
And George, you also have to think about with these customers as they're waiting, we're building relationships, then we can start educating them that an appointment would be best for them to meet their convenience.
Okay, great. I'm starting to get this, guys. Now, I've heard this phrase getting thrown around, it has to do with, acquisition and retention and understanding your business. What is this customer frequency report? What's that all about?
Well, George, it's a great question, and you, as many others, unfortunately, are really not aware of what a great tool a visit frequency report really can be. And it measures 2 basic things that have to do with retention. First, how many of your customers are coming in one time in a 12-month period and not coming back? And second, it measures how many times a customer is coming in on average.
So if, let's say that we do that report and it turns out that my retention's low, that means my customers aren't coming back. What do I do?
Well, George, yes, and it also brings up another question. It does mean that they're coming back, but the question really is why? And there could be many reasons. And Mike brought up earlier about the car not being fixed right the first time or done when promised. But you also have to think about that relationship with that front counter. And when there's low visit frequency or a lot of one-time visits, we really got to think about, is something really broken at that front counter?
The service advisor should be working on counter skills to make sure that we are impressing the customers so that they want to come back.
We should also be focused on exit scheduling that we talked about earlier.
Mike, exit scheduling, what is that?
George, exit scheduling is simply letting the customer know the service that the car requires the next time and trying to set that appointment for that service.
And just a little tip, stay away from the word appointment. Usually people associate the word appointment with pain. A focus on pleasure. Use the word reservation. They typically reserve things for good, for dinner and things of that nature. But then I also want you to think about this. Focus on that customer's convenience. We picked on earlier about the soccer moms and things of that nature and how important their schedule is. Utilize that to your advantage. If you know Mrs. Smith likes being there at 8 o'clock because she's got to get little Susie somewhere by 9, remind her when you set that next appointment that, Mrs. Smith, I know you like to be here at 8, and just to make sure we can match your convenience, how about if I set your next appointment for 3 months from today at that 8 o'clock, just to make sure I can get you out of here on time. Just a little tip.
You should also have some sort of CSI process to measure how happy your customers are.
Finally, one of the biggest things that you have to do is you have to find out who the people are that have not been back in the last 9 months, follow up with them, because the only ones who's going to tell you why they haven't been back is the customers themselves. And if there's a problem, you need to find out what that is and then fix it, whatever that could be. So, guys, next question. When do I use acquisition marketing to help me out with my labor margin on my car count?
Well, George, you always need more new customers, since you will always be losing some of the customers you have today. And if your retention is high, then the customers are happy and they are more likely to refer customers to you that are much cheaper and lesser expensive using referrals.
If your retention numbers are high, then you can spend more time and money on acquiring new customers, since you know you will have a better chance of keeping them when they come in.
Well, that makes sense. If I'm keeping the ones that I already have, and they're coming back more often, and I get new customers in, they'll probably stick around too, so we're probably doing a good job at the counter. Okay, I'm starting to get it, guys. What's the difference between marketing and advertising? Help me out.
And that's a great question, George. But marketing is the whole spectrum of ways to reach your customers. And the purpose of marketing is to build relationships with the consumers. Now, you got to think about it this way. A car is a car, and people can have it fixed anywhere. We're in the people business, and we need to focus on those relationships.
And advertising would be the call to action.
Okay, guys, so I know we're talking about labor margin, and I know I want to make sure I maximize the number of cars that are coming in so I keep my crew busy and I'm taking care of that labor inventory that you talked about, the hours that these guys could turn. So when do I need to start attracting new customers?
Immediately. And too often we don't work on retention or acquisition until we get slow. And this should be an ongoing process to ensure there are no ups and downs in the car count, which can kill your labor margins.
So like when we're busy all summer and we're rocking and rolling, and then all of a sudden, end of the summer, it's back to school and we slow down. Is that what you're talking about?
Exactly, George. We should have been working on the marketing for the slow times when we were busy. It never stops.
And guys, if you think about it, advertising is what gets the customer to the door. The marketing is what keeps them coming back with your choreography, how they're met and greeted at the counter, the service experience they have. So again, advertising gets them to the door, marketing keeps them coming back. And if we build up the crew when we are busy and don't pay attention to the marketing, then we have to lay people off or suffer a bad labor margin when things get slow. Your marketing plan is a non-stop approach. And the key is to keep the entire shop full and busy all year round. And George, you got to remember that from the minute you open the door in the morning until the time you turn off the lights in the evening, you are marketing.
Okay, guys, so next thing I'm really curious about, how do I know when my ads that I'm putting out there, when they're not effective? How do I keep track of that?
George, you should be using your point of sale marketing tracker and asking each and every customer how they found you and why were they coming back.
Okay, Mike, that's great, but how should I be tracking my ad responses? Help me out a little bit.
George, make sure all your bases are covered in the point of sale marketing tracking system. All sources are covered, and if you're running some sort of price point marketing, make sure you have new and repeat next to it, so you know how many of the people that responded were brand new customers or just regular customers coming back because of that offer.
Mike, one thing I'd like to throw in here, I mean, we've talked about visit frequency report, acquisition and retention, and this is a lot of information we share in the marketing class here at ATI, so if you haven't been here yet, please get to that class.
So guys, is advertising and marketing expensive to keep my shop up to full capacity?
Well, George, they don't have to be, and you should have a mix of cheap but not easy and easy but not cheap efforts going on all the time.
Okay guys, so all the stuff you're laying on me, how do I keep all this stuff straight?
Use a marketing calendar.
Okay, fine, Brian. I'll bite. What's a marketing calendar?
A marketing calendar, I think, is really sexy. A marketing calendar basically is a preloaded calendar throughout the course of a year with your daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually scheduled events. It will tell you when to prepare for the event. It will tell you when to mail the event. But it also comes with some cool features that you can track your marketing, as we just talked about, tracking each source by a code. How many customers came in, how many dollars spent, how many gross profit dollars were generated for you to be able to track your return on investment. But this also will help you determine what your customer acquisition response rate, as well as your customer retention response rates for you to plan for next quarter and next year's marketing, just to make sure that this was a good investment.
So you're talking about I'll know ahead of time, every day, every week, every month, every quarter, what I'm supposed to be doing for the entire year for my marketing to keep everything on track, to keep that car count stable, and to make sure that I don't have a problem with my labor margin. Is that it?
Well, that's it, George, and this is what we call predictable success.
Okay, I love this marketing calendar idea. Where do I get one of those?
I am so glad you asked, George. You guys will have to stay tuned and keep an eye out for some updates into the portal, because one of the most sexiest changes I have coming for you for 2012 is a marketing calendar. And this will be self-fed from your current portal data. It will self-feed your current car count, current average repair order, and your current gross profit margin. With those numbers, that will help you build the best plan you ever had for marketing. So keep an eye open in 2012 for our new marketing calendar.
Predictable success, man, I love the sound of that. I can't wait to hear more. But let me ask you a question, because I've heard this term bounced around. How do I create a marketing budget?
Stay tuned for the marketing calendar.
Okay, so Mike, what would be one great tool that I could use for my business that's not going to cost me a lot of money?
George, simply making the thank you calls and the reminder calls to get someone back in can make a huge difference in the car count, and in return it will keep the labor hours sold steady so that we can keep the crew busy and keep the labor margin where it needs to be.
And George, you had asked about cheap but not easy. I got a couple little things to focus on, and right there from the front counter, referrals, referrals, referrals. A lot of people say they have a referral program. The question is how much dust is on it and how often is it used and or measured. So referrals, you got to think about the taxi certificates, and you service writers got to think about the keychains. When a customer hands you a fistful of keys, or they start to take that key off, I want you to grab it from them and say, I'll take care of this for you. Look at the keys on the keychain. Not only the one we're looking at today, but I want you to see if there are any other keys that aren't already in your family fleet or your management system. That one's a freebie.
Another thing to look at is the wedding ring. If there's a wedding ring on that person's finger and you check the history, there's only one vehicle under that, chances are there's a significant other, and based on their age, there may be even a teenager in the house. Pay attention to that too, because if we're only doing the mom's car or dad's car, we want every car in that household. Absolutely.
And that wraps up customer acquisition and retention. And how does that rob productivity from your shop? Now, we've just spent the last hour talking about acquisition and retention. Here at ATI, we have an awesome class that pulls all this together for you. So, George, tell them a little bit about what goes on in day one and day two.
Well, let's talk about this first. Advertising, marketing, it's not the way you ran your shop 10 years ago. It ain't your daddy's shop. Now, the first day we start off with internet, search engine optimization, search engine marketing. Why is Google so important? Why is your reputation, your online reputation, so incredibly important? Word of mouth, people aren't talking to their neighbors anymore. What they're doing is they're going online, looking up your business. And if your reputation on there, if you don't have good reviews, you're sunk. By the way, simple little drill that you can try to see if you're in tune with today's society. Type in auto repair, your city, your state under Google, because that's where most of the people are doing their searches, and see if you even show up on page 1. If you're not on page 1, you're on page 2. Guess what? You're the golf clubs behind the camping gear that you haven't seen for 3 years and you don't even know they're at. In other words, you don't have an internet presence. That's worth anywhere from 5 to 15 cars a week. Oh, by the way, did I mention that it's absolutely free? Doesn't cost you a dime to do that. We'll teach you those skills. Search engine optimization, search engine marketing, how to manage your online reputation. Also, we go into social media. Ooh, social media. A lot of people are scared of this stuff. It's really simple, but knowing what to do on things like Facebook, Google+, YouTube. By the way, did you know that YouTube is the largest how-to search engine in the world? It's the second largest search engine overall. There are shops, there are companies that are building entire reputations, entire brands on doing nothing but YouTube. We teach you how to create viral videos. We teach you exactly how to take the photograph, how to film the testimonials. By the way, on websites, we're going to go through review your website. What are the 10 things that you need to have on your website? Over and over, we see that people have testimonials from customers, and you have the verbiage that, oh, your shop was great, Susie Q. Guess what? Letters, if they don't have a picture attached to them, don't have as much impact. So you have the verbiage, okay, that's nice. Verbiage with a picture, that's better. How about a video of the customer? Now you've got some real emotional impact that you can put in play so that when people come to your Google Places or they come to your website, now you're going to make an impact on them and they're going to go, you know what, I like those guys, I'm picking up the phone, I'm going to call them up and make an appointment. You can't afford to miss this section because I can guarantee you're not going to get it anywhere else but here.
On day 3, we talk about the acquisition. We talk about the retention, measuring visit frequency and recency. We talk about response rates for both and how to build a marketing plan based off of the visit frequency and recency and response rates to create that predictable success. We talk about the choreography and the 6 keys or the 6 areas where you can make or break all of your advertising dollars.
So if you haven't been to marketing 7 through 9, or it's been a long time since you've been to it, call your coach and register now.
If you haven't been to this class in over a year, you wouldn't even know what you're missing. We rewrite it every single class just to be able to keep up with what's changing right now. One last thing. Do you know how to calculate your return on investment for an advertisement, for a flyer? My guess is the way you're doing it is wrong. If you're not sure if I'm right or not, come to class and find out.
I'm Brian Stosh.
I'm George Zeeks.
And I'm Mike Haley.
Thanks for watching.